When I opened our joint savings account that morning, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. The balance was $25,000 short. I refreshed the page twice, hoping it was a banking error. My hands were shaking as I called the bank, but they confirmed it. The money had been transferred 2 days ago. The account name it went to was Lydia Whitmore, Ethan's sister. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at the numbers on the screen. That money was our future. For years, I'd cut corners, used coupons, and skipped small pleasures because we were saving for a down payment on our first home. Every dollar meant something to me. To see it vanish like that, it felt like someone had ripped a piece out of me. When Ethan came home that evening, I tried to stay calm. I asked him if he knew anything about a transfer to Lydia. He didn't even flinch. "Yeah," he said, loosening his tie. "I gave her 25 grand. She's starting a new business and she needed help." My heart sank. "You gave her our savings?" Without even asking me. He looked annoyed, as if I'd asked something stupid. "It's my money too, Clara. I work for it. You just stay at home all day." Those words hit harder than I expected. I wasn't lazy. I took care of our home, cooked, cleaned, and made sure every bill was paid on time. I supported him through late nights, job changes, and his family drama. But to him, it was nothing. I told him it wasn't fair, that it was both our savings, and he had no right to give it away without talking to me. He turned toward me, eyes cold, and said, "You don't understand how the real world works. You're just a stupid housewife." For a moment, I couldn't even breathe. It was like the air had been sucked out of the room. I had never heard him talk to me like that before. The man who once held my hand through everything now looked at me like I was a burden. He walked away before I could say another word. The sound of his footsteps up the stairs felt final, like a door closing. I sat there, numb, replaying what he said again and again. Stupid housewife. The words burned in my chest. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how easily he had betrayed me, not just by spending the money, but by showing me what he really thought of me. I realized that our marriage wasn't built on love anymore. It was built on control. I didn't cry. I just stared into the dark and promised myself one thing. If he thought I was a stupid housewife, he was about to find out just how wrong he was. I woke up the next morning hoping Ethan would say he was sorry, or at least admit he was wrong. But when I walked into the kitchen, he was sitting there, reading the paper like nothing had happened. I asked him again why he took the money without telling me. He didn't even look up. He just said, "It's a family matter, Clara. Lydia needed help." End of story. I told him it wasn't just his money, that it was ours. He sighed loudly, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "You don't even earn anything," he said. "I'm the one paying the bills. You wouldn't understand." Something inside me cracked. He made it sound like my time, my effort, and everything I did for our home meant nothing. I stood there, trying to keep my voice calm, but he kept talking over me. "You should be grateful, Clara. Most women would love to have a husband who takes care of everything." Later that week, Lydia came over. She was all smiles, wearing new clothes and carrying an expensive purse. She gave me a hug that felt fake and said, "Thank you so much for being so generous. I don't know what I would have done without that money." Her tone was sweet, but her eyes said something else. She knew exactly what she was doing. I wanted to tell her to give it back, but Ethan stood behind her, smirking like he was proud of himself. I felt trapped in my own home. So, I smiled back and said nothing. That night, when they went out to celebrate Lydia's new business, I sat by myself and opened our bank statements again. For the first time, I noticed other strange things. Small withdrawals I didn't remember making, card charges I couldn't trace. It wasn't just about Lydia anymore. Ethan had been hiding things from me for a long time. I didn't cry this time. I opened a notebook and started writing everything down, dates, amounts, names. Every little detail. If he wanted to treat me like I was clueless, I would quietly prove just how wrong he was. As I sat there, the anger in me turned into something calmer, colder. I didn't know what I'd do yet, but one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let him or his sister take anything more from me. A few weeks passed, and I tried to act normal, but inside I was still hurt. Ethan acted like nothing had happened, and Lydia kept showing up, talking about her new business. Every time she mentioned it, something in her voice didn't sound right. She never talked about what kind of business it was, just that she was busy with paperwork. It made me curious. One afternoon, while Ethan was at work, Lydia stopped by our house to borrow something. I walked her out to her car, and that's when I saw it, a brand new silver convertible parked in the driveway. It was shiny and expensive, the kind of car people buy to show off. Lydia noticed me staring and said with a smile, "Pretty, isn't it?" I figured I deserved a little treat before the hard work starts. She got in and drove away, leaving me standing there, speechless. A cold feeling spread through me. That car wasn't a treat. It was our savings. The money that was supposed to be for our home. That night, when Ethan came home, I asked him directly, "Did Lydia really start a business?" Because I saw her driving a new car today. His eyes darted away for a second, then he said, "She bought it for business use. She'll pay it back once things pick up." I knew he was lying, but I didn't push. I just nodded like I believed him. Something about the way he avoided my eyes told me everything I needed to know. I went to bed quietly, pretending to let it go, but my mind was racing. A few days later, I went to Ethan's office to leave some documents he had forgotten. While I was there, I noticed a folded piece of paper sticking out from his desk drawer. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. It was a car purchase receipt, Lydia's name on it, and Ethan's signature as a co-signer. The total price was $25,000. My hands shook as I read it. That was the proof. He didn't just give her money, he helped her lie about it. I sat in his office chair, holding the paper, realizing how deep the betrayal ran. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about trust, loyalty, and respect, all the things he'd thrown away for his sister. When Ethan came home that night, I greeted him with a smile, cooked dinner, and acted like everything was fine. Inside, though, something had changed. I stopped reacting to his moods. I stopped arguing. I listened, I smiled, and I agreed, all while planning. He thought I had forgiven him. He thought I was still the same quiet, obedient wife. But I was done being blind. I decided that from now on, I would play along until I found the right time, the right way, to take back what he had stolen from me piece by piece. After finding that receipt, something inside me changed. I stopped crying, stopped arguing, and stopped hoping Ethan would ever see me differently. If he thought I was just a housewife who didn't understand money, then that would be my advantage. I knew I couldn't rely on him anymore. I needed to rely on myself. When Ethan left for work each morning, I would sit at the dining table with my laptop. At first, I wasn't sure where to begin. It had been years since college, but I still remembered the basics of finance. I started searching for remote bookkeeping jobs, small businesses that needed someone to handle their accounts. It felt strange at first, almost like I was sneaking around. But after a few days, I got my first client. Then another. It wasn't much money, but it was mine. Every time I got paid, I moved a small portion into a separate online account under my own name. I told Ethan nothing. When he asked what I was doing on the computer, I just said I was looking up recipes or watching videos. He didn't care enough to check. As I worked, I also started learning more about managing money, the kind of knowledge Ethan always acted like only he could understand. I studied how to track accounts, how to trace hidden spending, and how to protect assets. I made copies of every bank statement, every receipt, and every document that showed where our money had gone. I hid them in a folder behind the cleaning supplies, where I knew Ethan would never look. The more I worked, the more confident I felt. I was no longer scared or helpless. I was building something quietly, something Ethan couldn't touch. I didn't spend the money on myself. I saved every cent. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about freedom. At dinner, Ethan would complain about his job or brag about how he managed our finances, and I would nod and smile. He had no idea that I now understood more about our accounts than he did. Every time he called me a housewife, I let him. It made it easier to keep my secret. Over time, my little savings account started to grow. It wasn't huge, but it gave me peace. I knew that if things ever got worse, I wouldn't be trapped. I could walk away and take care of myself. Each night, as I closed my laptop and turned off the lights, I felt a small spark of pride. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid. I didn't need Ethan's approval, and I didn't need his money. I was no longer the woman who begged him to listen. I was the woman who was quietly preparing for the day he'd finally realize what he had lost. Ethan's arrogance seemed to grow every day. He had become louder, meaner, and more proud of things he didn't even deserve credit for. One Friday night, he came home smiling in that smug way that always meant trouble. "We're having dinner with Lydia and Mason tomorrow," he said. "They want to show us something." He didn't ask if I wanted to go. He just told me, like always. The next evening, I set the table and tried to keep my nerves calm. Lydia arrived wearing a glittery dress, holding her boyfriend's hand like she was showing him off. They both looked pleased with themselves. Outside, I saw that same silver convertible parked in the driveway, the one she had bought with our money. Dinner started fine, but Ethan kept making small jabs at me. He joked about how I didn't understand business, how I worried too much about small things. Lydia laughed along, her voice sharp and fake. At one point, Mason said, "That car outside must have cost a fortune." Lydia grinned and said, "Oh, it did. But family's generous, right, Clara?" She looked straight at me. Ethan laughed too, like it was all a big joke. I felt my face heat up, but I stayed quiet. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me angry. After dinner, I stood up to leave the table, but Ethan stopped me. "Where are you going? Don't get moody now. You should be proud your husband can take care of everyone." His tone was mocking, and everyone at the table laughed, even Lydia. I wanted to disappear. For a moment, I thought about shouting, about throwing the truth in his face, but something in me froze. I realized there was no point in arguing anymore. He wasn't listening, and he never would. So I excused myself, went upstairs, and sat on the edge of the bed in silence. That's when I decided it was over. Not just the fight, but the marriage. The next morning, I called a lawyer. I didn't tell her everything yet, just enough for her to guide me. She told me what documents to gather and what to look for. That same day, I started my careful work. I printed bank statements, copied receipts, and photographed anything suspicious. While going through our accounts, I noticed new expenses, hotel stays, dinners, jewelry, things Ethan had never mentioned. The dates didn't match his work trips. My stomach turned as I realized what it meant. He wasn't just lying about money anymore. Still, I kept calm. I took pictures, saved files, and stored them in my hidden folder. At dinner that night, I acted normal. I smiled when he talked, nodded when he bragged, and laughed when he made his little jokes. But deep inside, I had already left him. I wasn't his stupid housewife anymore. I was the quiet storm he didn't see coming. Weeks went by, and Ethan acted as if everything in our life was normal. He smiled more often, maybe because he thought I had forgiven him. But behind that smile, I could see how careless he had become. One evening, while he was in the shower, I went through a stack of papers he had left on the kitchen counter. There were envelopes from the bank. I opened one and froze. It was a notice about missed payments for a mortgage pre-approval we had applied for months ago. The one we'd been waiting on to buy our first home. I read the letter twice. It said the pre-approval had been canceled because of multiple loan inquiries and unpaid balances. I didn't understand how that could happen. We didn't have any debts, or so I thought. I started digging through more of his documents. That's when I found something worse, applications for credit lines, all with my name on them, but not my signature. My social security number was listed. He had used my identity to open joint accounts without my consent. For a few seconds, I just sat there, stunned. It felt like my whole world was spinning. Ethan hadn't only betrayed my trust. He had stolen from me in every way possible. I felt sick, but I didn't confront him. Not yet. I knew if I showed my anger, he would lie again, twist everything around, and make me look like the fool. So I smiled when he came downstairs, asked him about his day, and served dinner like nothing was wrong. From that day on, I started my own quiet setup. I went to the bank and opened an account under my maiden name. I told the clerk I wanted something private, separate, just for myself. Every week, I transferred small amounts of money from our joint account, just enough that Ethan wouldn't notice. I also moved the income from my bookkeeping jobs into that account. At home, I played my part perfectly. I laughed at his jokes, cooked his favorite meals, and nodded while he bragged about how smart he was with money. But every time I looked at him, I saw someone I no longer recognized. He had taken my name, my trust, and my peace. Each night, when he fell asleep, I worked quietly on my laptop. I gathered every document, every receipt, and every record I could find. I made copies and stored them in a small folder inside my suitcase. That suitcase stayed under the bed, zipped and ready. I wasn't just planning to leave anymore. I was planning to make him understand what betrayal truly felt like. He had taken everything from me, piece by piece. Now, I was going to take something back, my freedom, my future, and the control he thought I'd never have again. 2 weeks later, life shifted faster than Ethan ever expected. One morning, he came home early from work, looking pale and tense. His tie was loose, his shirt wrinkled. I was sitting at the table, pretending to go through recipes, when he dropped his briefcase and said quietly, "They let me go." I didn't react right away. I just asked, "What happened?" He rubbed his forehead and muttered, "Downsizing." They said it wasn't personal. He tried to sound calm, but I could hear the fear in his voice. For the first time in years, Ethan didn't look proud or confident. He looked lost. Over the next few days, everything began to unravel. Lydia stopped calling. She didn't visit, didn't text, didn't even answer when Ethan tried to reach her. I overheard one of his phone calls. He begged her to return some money, but she hung up on him. He slammed the phone down and cursed under his breath. The man who once bragged about taking care of everyone was now being ignored by the same people he'd sacrificed everything for. The bills started piling up. Credit card statements, utilities, and car payments, all addressed to both of us. He grew more frustrated each day. He snapped at me for small things, like leaving a light on or buying groceries. But when he went to check our joint account, his face turned white. The balance was almost nothing. He turned to me sharply. "Where's the money, Clara?" I looked at him and said calmly, "You've been handling our finances, remember?" He stared at me, confused and angry. He went through the statements again, typing furiously on his laptop. "Something's wrong," he said. "It's not adding up." I stayed quiet, pretending to think. Inside, I knew exactly what was happening. I had already moved my share weeks ago. Every small transfer, every quiet step had led to this moment. The money he thought he controlled was now safe in my own account. Days passed, and his confidence turned into panic. He applied for jobs but heard nothing back. He tried to borrow from friends, but most of them avoided him. Lydia was nowhere to be found. Even his parents, who once treated him like a hero, started giving excuses when he called. One evening, he sat on the couch staring at the empty checkbook. "Clara," he said softly, "we're in trouble. I might need your help." I looked at him carefully. He was no longer the man who called me names or laughed at me in front of others. He was just a broken man realizing the walls were closing in. I felt a strange calmness wash over me. I didn't yell. I didn't comfort him. I just said, "We'll figure it out," in the same gentle tone he once used to lie to me. But inside I was waiting for the perfect moment to show him what true loss really feels like. I had reached the end of my patience. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't make the bills disappear, the debts vanish, or the constant pressure ease. Pride had always been my shield, but now it felt heavy and useless. I knew I had to swallow it. With a trembling hand, I picked up the phone and called Clara. My voice shook as I asked if she could help me with money. Clara answered calmly. I sensed she had been expecting my call in a way, though she didn't let it show. She had been working from home for months, quietly building a savings fund that I had never suspected. While I thought she was distracted with trivial things, she had been planning, saving, and protecting herself. The tables had turned without me noticing. When I arrived, I could feel the tension in the room. Clara sat across from me, her expression composed but firm. She listened to my desperate words, then, without anger, she pulled out folders and receipts. One by one, she showed me the evidence: bills she had paid, money she had saved, and a letter from her lawyer outlining the divorce proceedings. I could not hide my shock. Every proof, every document, revealed that Clara had been careful, aware, and strong while I had been blind to her intelligence. She spoke quietly but clearly. She explained her decision, detailing how she had tried to manage things while I struggled, and why she now felt divorce was the only path forward. She was not seeking revenge or trying to punish me. She was simply protecting herself, making sure she would not be left vulnerable. Her words were calm, but they carried the weight of months of careful thought and planning. I felt a sudden realization wash over me. I had underestimated her in every way. I had believed she was naive, dependent, and incapable of handling serious matters. Now, sitting there and seeing the receipts and the lawyer's letter, I had no illusions left. She had never been the stupid housewife I thought she was. Everything I had assumed about her, every slight judgment I had made, was wrong. I felt a sharp sting of regret. All the times I had dismissed her opinions, ignored her advice, or taken her for granted, they came crashing back at me. I had begged for help, thinking I could still control the situation, but I was the one being shown my place. She had been the strong one all along. I realized that pride meant nothing when faced with the truth. I had to accept that I was vulnerable, dependent on someone I had underestimated. And for the first time, I saw Clara clearly, not just as my wife, but as a capable, determined, intelligent person who had planned for her own safety while I floundered. My desperation had brought me here, but the clarity I felt was undeniable. I had lost control, and in that loss, I finally understood her. I begged Clara for a second chance. My voice was shaky, my hands trembling, and I could feel how desperate I sounded. I tried to explain myself, blaming my stress, my mistakes, and everything that had gone wrong. I hoped she would listen, hoped she might forgive me if I spoke just the right words. Lydia stepped in, trying to help me. She told Clara that I was under too much pressure, that I was just stressed, and that maybe I deserved another chance. She tried to make Clara feel sorry for me, saying that my failures were not really my fault. I could see her whispering and giving me encouraging looks, as if she could fix everything for me. But Clara didn't waver. She looked at both of us with steady eyes, calm and unshaken. Then she spoke, and I felt the truth hit me like a punch. She revealed everything Lydia had been hiding, the lies, the fake business, and the money she had stolen. She explained it all clearly to the family, showing proof and documents. Every lie that had been whispered, every excuse that had been made, was exposed in front of everyone. I could feel my stomach drop. I realized how wrong I had been to trust Lydia, how blind I had been to everything happening around me. The family stared, shocked, some angry, some silent. Lydia's face changed slowly, from confident to shocked, then to panic. Her reputation, which she had carefully built, crumbled in front of everyone. I had never expected this. I had never realized that trusting her would bring all of this down on me. Clara stayed strong. She explained why she had made her decisions, why she was leaving, and how she had protected herself from me and from Lydia. She packed her things quietly, calmly, without a word of anger toward me. I wanted to say something, to beg again, but I had no words that could fix this. She moved out, leaving me alone in the house I had ruined. The silence afterward was heavy. The bills, the debts, the chaos I had caused, all of it now belonged to me. I had no one to blame but myself. The financial ruin, the emotional mess, and the shame were mine alone. I tried to remember the moments I had ignored, the choices I had made, and the trust one had broken. Every mistake pressed on me, making it hard to breathe. I thought about Clara leaving, her calm determination, her strength. I realized I had lost not just her, but my place in the family, my respect, and my own pride. I was left to face the consequences, to live with what I had created. There was no one to fix this for me, no magic words, no excuses. Only me, the mess I had made, and the truth I had refused to see until it was too late. I understood, painfully, that I had brought this on myself. And now I had to live with it. I signed the last papers for the divorce, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. Everything that had tied me to Ethan, the lies, the control, and the hurt, was finally gone. For the first time in years, I felt free. I could make decisions for myself, live in a space that belonged to me, and build a life that was truly my own. With the money I had saved, I found a small home. It was modest, but it was mine in my name, exactly the kind of place I had always wanted before Ethan took everything for granted. Walking through it for the first time, I felt a thrill I hadn't felt in a long time. Every room, every corner was a piece of my independence. I painted the walls the colors I liked, chose furniture that reflected my taste, and even planted flowers outside. This home wasn't just a building. It was proof that I could stand on my own. Months later, Ethan showed up. He looked smaller than I remembered, his shoulders slumped, his clothes worn, and his pride gone. He tried to apologize, explaining his failures and asking for forgiveness. But I only smiled. I could feel pity, but no regret for my choices. I thanked him quietly, honestly, for teaching me a lesson I needed to learn. The value of self-respect, the importance of standing up for myself, and the strength I had to survive on my own. He left eventually, carrying his shame and his mistakes, while I watched him go with no desire to look back. The past no longer controlled me. I felt lighter, stronger, and fully aware of who I was. For years, I had been underestimated, dismissed, and called weak. Now, every part of that label had been stripped away. I was not the woman he thought he could break or control. Sitting on my porch one evening, the cool breeze brushing my face, I held the deed to my home in my hands. Signing my name, I felt a thrill that was both simple and profound. This was my life, my work, and my victory. I looked around at the small garden, the freshly painted walls, and the neat rooms inside, and I realized that nothing could take this away from me. Every betrayal, every lie, every pain I had endured had led me here, to this moment of true freedom. I leaned back in the chair, letting the sun warm my face, and allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. I was no longer a stupid housewife, no longer someone who could be pushed around or underestimated. I was reborn, independent, and fully in control of my life. This was my home, my choice, and my life. Proof that even after betrayal, it was possible to rise, rebuild, and claim happiness for myself.